Morning, everyone. So, we still don't have the date for the Wellingborough by-election. We know there are several by-elections coming up, and but it is one good day because I've finally been able to put. I keep saying this. I'm not promoting betting behaviour at all, but I have put a bet on Labour to win Wellingborough. I get absolutely nothing back. Absolutely nothing. I get my money back. Is pretty much how short the odds are on Labour. Obviously, bear in mind, betting odds are not like probabilities of winning. It's also massaged. But if there's lots of people betting on Labour, that shortens the odds anyway. But you can get a very healthy return on the Conservatives. If you thought the Conservatives had a shout in this election, you could put a bet on that and you'd get a very tasty return. Very indeed. Absolutely nothing for me. In fact, you could put basically this way: if you put £10 on Labour, you get £2 back. If you put £10 on the Conservatives, you get £27.50 back. That's how extreme it is. So Labour are going to win Wellingborough. There's also another by-election likely to be coming at the same time, which is in Kingswood, which I need to look more into. This was caused by the resignation of Chris Skidmore. I don't know whether has he actually resigned? I don't know whether I'm going to have to check if he's actually resigned because I'll check it later. He said he was going to resign as soon as Parliament returned, and he may well have already done that. But also there was supposed to be a vote on the like the North Sea oil and gas license bill thing. And I didn't know whether he wanted to stay in Parliament long enough to vote against it or something or what. I don't know. So I'll have to check that. But anyway, by-elections, and Labour are deciding to lean in to a particular aspect of the cost of living crisis, which is mortgage payments, because this speaks to a key voting demographic. So mortgage holders tend to be those people who will. City Life saying he has resigned. Okay, thank you. I saw the resignation letter, but that's not necessarily means you resigned. But if he has officially resigned, then okay, that's fine. So has Benton gone yet too? No. Scott Benton is appealing his suspension. So, but that shouldn't take too long. But it won't be on the same day. The Scott Benton by-election will not be on the same day as these other two, but that's fine. It means it strings it out. So Labour are likely to lean into mortgage payments, as I say, because you're talking about a group. If you're thinking about the groups of people who basically determine elections, it's not the millions and millions, it's not the tens of millions of people who vote in an election every few years. It's the few 100,000 who in one election will vote Labour and in another election will vote Conservative. And even then, in the marginal constituencies, doesn't matter if it's in the big cities or the rural heartlands or anything like that. Although the rural heartlands, that Tory heart is not beating very well at the moment. So Labour also saying they're confident that, in fact, I saw something in the Guardian said, there are no-go areas for us. It's not actually quite true. If that's Kingswood, Surrey, Tory stockbroker belt, my aunt and uncle live there. So I'm not sure about the geography. What I will tell you is that I don't think it is. My home county's geography is not good, but I'll tell you roughly where it is. It's been broken up. So the constituency of Kingswood isn't going to exist in the next election. It's been broken up 5 ways. And a bit of it is going to be Jacob Rees-Mogg's problem. And he's like Somerset. So it's sort of, I think, probably a bit west. But again, I don't know. That might be right next to Surrey. Who knows? But it may be a different one, is what I'm saying. I imagine there's a lot of places called Kingswood. But yeah, so Labour are effectively, by leaning into the mortgage payments issue, they've done research that has highlighted that 100,000 key voters are going to be facing stiffer mortgage payments this year. Now, bear in mind that the sort of financial analysis says there are 1.8 million people who are going to be renewing their mortgages this year. So there are 1.8 million people this year who are going to be facing significantly higher mortgage payments, maybe way higher mortgage payments. And yet Labour are talking about 100,000 people. That just highlights the extent to which most people's vote isn't really, it's important, but it's not impacting the next government. 1.8 million people are renewing their mortgages this year. That is known. Labour are talking about 100,000 mortgage holders that they're trying to target. It just shows you the relatively. So when people talk about things like, oh, why don't Labour do this? This is publicly popular, or why are they doing this? Because actually the majority of the public don't agree this is a good idea. It's like majority doesn't matter in a first past the post system. It's that much smaller number of voters, much smaller number. But it also shows that it's an area where the Conservatives are weak, that Labour are focusing on effectively a standard of living issue for swing voters, and that they're going to lean into it. You know, Labour's traditional safe place is, I mean, obviously, whenever they want to win power, they have to make the economy their safe place as well. But their traditional safe places are the NHS, education, housing. And this isn't a housing issue because these people have a house. They just want to keep it. So that's what they're focusing on there. Colin's saying there, the Kingswood in Surrey is a very pretty area on the railway line to Tottenham Corner. Oh, they've got a railway line. Good for them. We don't have a railway line where I am. But yeah, it's and you think about, so it's quite interesting because we've seen what Reform UK are going to go with, because they're going hard in Wellingborough with Ben Habib. I've seen their campaign leaflets, a bit crap, but you know, it's only supposed to appeal to a certain section of the population. Labour are going to go in largely on the mortgage payments, not just in Wellingborough, but in by-elections in general. So the other by-elections, just to go through them. So we've got Kingswood, which I suppose is round about Somerset, I don't know, Gloucestershire type area. You've got Blackpool South will come up because Scott Benton, you know, he's going to fail his appeal. He's only doing it to save time, right? So to waste a bit of time so he can get a bit more money in. Like, you remember, every month he can stay as an MP, it's an extra like £7,000 for him. And then there might actually be Blackpool North in the offing as well. Because for those who saw it last week, the pensions minister, I think he is still the pensions minister as well, has been sort of found to have fiddled taxpayer money. So what he's done is he's used taxpayer money to fund constituency resources, like a constituency office, stuff like that, which is obviously absolutely fine. That's grand. However, you're not then, anything you get for your constituency work, you're not supposed to use for party political work. So as an MP, you are an MP, you're serving your constituency, right? And you're also going to need to be active in Parliament. That's your public duties for which you get expenses. But then you're also, in this case, a Conservative MP, but you're also a member of a political party and you campaign for that political party. But you have to keep the two activities separate. You mustn't use public money, even though the government do it all the time. And he's found that actually he has been. And when a Conservative Party member, a local member, brought it up, he was very aggressive. So there's every chance, unless we do get this election in May, in which case he may be all right, he'll still lose, but you know, he may at least not get the suspension. He could be on for a suspension as well. So if Sunak does want to go later into the year, then that could be another by-election in the offing. Although I will still say I really don't think they are really trying for May. Because another thing, apart from everything else, if we come back to this Labour idea about using the remortgages for this year as a big stick for their by-election campaigning, if they're making a big issue of the fact that your mortgage is going to go up this year. And the line, if I read out the quote from Rachel Reeves, first of all, where's it gone? Here it is. So apparently she said, according to The Guardian, this is her line: homeowners across Britain, including many lifelong Tory voters, have been left worse off after 14 years of economic failure. The aftershocks of the Conservatives' disastrous mini-budget that crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates soaring continue to be felt for thousands of hard-pressed families. So let's break down what's in that statement. So she says, first of all, homeowners across Britain. So she's focusing on mortgage holders, of course, who are, very much swing voters. These are swing voters. And then she says, including many lifelong Tory voters. So she's not just after the people who, 15 years ago were voting Labour because, Major and Thatcher had messed it all up. So we'll vote for Blair and Brown. Then they decided after the global crash, oh, we don't like this. We're going to vote for David Cameron. He seems fine. And they've been doing that ever since. So obviously Labour after those, you don't win government, you don't win the power without those. But she's also suggesting to lifelong Tory voters, not necessarily that they vote Labour, but that at least they stop voting Conservative. And then she says, after 14 years of economic failure, so she's making it clear that this isn't something that started with COVID or whatever. Then she says, the aftershocks of the Conservatives' disastrous mini-budget. It's no longer Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget or quasi-quasi, because last year they were calling it the kamikaze budget, weren't they? So the emphasis was on the individuals responsible, but now that's no good because they're out of the picture. So now it's the Conservative, which it was. It's the Conservatives because they chose her and they supported the budget. So the Conservatives' disastrous mini budget that crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates soaring. Now, in reality, a certain amount of the interest rates were going up anyway. So the interest rates would still have been higher. These people remortgaging this year would still have been faced with higher mortgage payments, but they're getting lumped with an extra premium as a result of this. But Labour are just, linking it entirely to it. So, so that's their line. And the thing about this is, every month, a new tranche of mortgage holders who've had their mortgages fixed, they fixed them a few years ago. Every single one of them, every month, sorry, a load of them are remortgaging. So if we're talking about, I'm not saying it evens out throughout the year, because there might be some times of year. In fact, I imagine there are some times of year when people are getting mortgages more than others. I can't imagine Christmas is a big move month, right? Or December rather, because of Christmas. But if you're talking about 1.8 million people in 2024 are going to be remortgaging because their fixed rate terms come to an end, then you're essentially talking about 150,000 people a month on average, not every month, but 150,000 people. So every extra month that the Conservatives wait, there's an average of an extra 150,000 people who need to remortgage and are being presented with these hundreds of pounds extra a month in some cases, particularly in the Tory heartlands, where houses are a bit more expensive, are being presented with these extra mortgage payments, which Labour is saying, remember that mini budget? That caused that. That caused that. And in fact, it doesn't matter whether it's the mini budget and a load of other things as well. It's still all Tory things that caused it. So, and if Labour think that this is really powerful and they'll have done their research, it just means if you really think that if some of these journalists that say, oh, we think they're going for a November election, it's like behave yourself, that would be an extra 6 months delay, which would be an extra 900,000 people. Do the Conservatives really want an extra 900,000 mortgage holders? And in fact, it could be more than that, because like I say, it won't be 150,000 every month. It might be that, I don't know when more people move. Maybe it is in the summer, in which case it'd be by 1 million or more. But should we say an average of 900,000 people, extra people, facing these higher mortgage payments by going to the election in November instead of May. So every time, it's like every day I'm reminded of some reason why the Conservatives will be in a worse position in November than May. There's just, as bad as things will be in May, it's just much worse. But anyway, I'll catch up with some comments here. South Gloucestershire is a new place, Kingwood in North Bristol. Oh, that's where Rachel Reeves was. She must have been campaigning there then. She's been around Bristol recently, hasn't she, this week? So I don't know the south of England really. I've driven to Cornwall and Devon a couple of times for holidays. That's about it. People are more likely to move around east. Oh, there you go. Okay, so they're getting. Oh, so they're that's going to happen just before the election. Then, if the election's in May, oh, they can't avoid that then. Countess Power saying I've moved twice in December. It wasn't by choice, right? See, I can't imagine the housing market's very active in December. It's a crap time of year, just in general, in terms of the sort of weather, but also, people getting ready for Christmas and so on. There we are. Labour should also be highlighting the abhorrent number of excess deaths due to Tory austerity, especially now Cameron's back. No, not at all, because who does that appeal to? Dead people can't vote. The people who care about that, being honest, weren't going to vote Conservative anyway, because we know all this. We know that austerity's killed people. The fact that there's, every few years there's a new study that shows just how many it's killed, and that number obviously has gone up. That doesn't work on target voters. That doesn't work on swing voters. The reason why Labour are talking, like I just told you, towards the start of the video, remember what I said. 1.8 million people are remortgaging this year. Labour are talking about the 100,000 people remortgaging this year. So their focus is on swing voters in key constituencies. Like, think about all the voters, right? You've got about 30 million voters, don't you? Something like that, who actually turn up to vote an election. There's more than that can vote. There's about 30 million, roughly, choose to vote, right? Those 30 million, you can't chase after all their votes. It'd be ridiculous anyway. They're all different people. But it doesn't matter, because think about it. First of all, there are some people who are just going to vote the same every single time. Yes, sometimes you'll get a lifelong voter of a particular party that then changes at some point. Something changes it. That may happen at this election. It may be that some lifelong Tory voters, I'm talking about milk, not voters, lifelong Tory voters will decide not just to stay at home this election. They may actually decide to vote for someone else. Maybe the Lib Dems, maybe Labour, maybe someone else. But generally speaking, people vote the same way throughout there are some people who vote the same way their entire lives. I'm one of them, right? Doesn't matter. Labour can do or say what they like within reason. So can the Conservatives. It's not going to change my vote. So you scrub those straight away. Then you look at, so you now got a pool of people who might change their vote, and changing their vote can include just staying at home, because staying at home is a voting decision as well. So people's voting behavior can change. So then you think, so where are they? So are they in an area that's so safe for the Conservatives that they'd win it? If they were left with just 20 MPs, that would be one of the 20 MPs they're left with. No point. There's no point in chasing after actually genuinely strong Conservative seats, or strong SNP seats, or strong Lib Dem seats. There aren't really strong other seats. There's no point in chasing a seat that you have no chance of winning in. So voters in those constituencies, Labour aren't chasing after those. So then you've focused on the seats that are winnable. Because the other thing is, if it's a safe Labour seat, you don't focus on those either, because it's a safe Labour seat. So you've now broken it down to the number of seats that are actually winnable. And even then, you're left with quite a small number of voters, because like I say, the ones who are not going to vote for you regardless, or the ones who are guaranteed to vote for you, you don't chase after those. That's how you end up with 1.8 million mortgage holders remortgaging this year, Labour focusing on 100,000 of them. That is how that works. Because the number of people that are actually important in a general election, I don't know whether important's the right word, because I think it is important for everyone to vote, even if you spoil your ballot, to at least engage in the process. But the number of people who will swing the election is really very small, which is why first past the post is absolutely ridiculous. Presumably, the longer the Tories wait, the stronger Reform UK get. Yes, absolutely. And Farage can get on the bandwagon. Potentially, I did a video on my own channel last week about Nigel Farage. My assessment with because you think to yourself, why hasn't Nigel Farage already stepped up? Right? We're now into election years. Everyone in politics knows that the Tories are aiming for May. That doesn't mean to say we're definitely going to get the election in May, but they are aiming for May. They're going to be in a much worse position in November. They know it. If I know it, they know it. So there's no reason for Nigel Farage not to have already stepped up and said, yes, I'm going to lead Reform UK's campaign, if he was going to do it at all. The reason I think he's not done it is because he wants to know when the election is. Because if the election is going to be in November, he won't do it. Why? Because the US presidential election's on, and he wants to be going around making pots of money supporting Donald Trump. So he doesn't want to commit himself. I think if the election's called for May, he will get involved, but it'll probably be too late because he's missing all this time to get the momentum going. He'll only have like once the election's called, he's got like 6 or 7 weeks. I mean, but that's what I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that's the reason. I don't think he wants to risk missing. Well, he won't miss out. He missed out in 2020 because of COVID. That knackered him. He was going to be making pots of money in America, and then he couldn't. Veg Pie 499 super chat. Thank you very much. Says, hi Phil. Did I know there's a Keir Starmer channel on YouTube? It has 1,000 subscribers and 63 videos. No, let's have a look. I mean, that sounds like it's catching up to the Labour Party channel. That shouldn't really make. I can't see it. It's not flagging up when I put it in. I can't see it come up when I type it into YouTube. So is it called something else? Proportional representation must be adopted. Absolutely. I'll tell you the moment for me when I thought to myself, we really need. I've never been opposed. Oh, Graham's found it. I've never been opposed to proportional representation. There's never been a part of my life where I've thought when I can't remember when I was introduced to the concept of PR. Probably when I was a voting age, but I can't remember. It's not, is it? Oh, I'm gonna have to look at this. This is actually Keir. Oh, he's useless. Oh, never mind. I'll do that later. Right. Okay. I'm gonna have a look at that later. And facepalm. What was I talking about? Yeah. So I've never been opposed to PR, but I'll tell you what made me a real advocate of it, and that's 2005. Now, I should have been delighted in 2000. I was delighted in 2005. Labour won again, historic third term, and a sizable majority. And yet, there's 2 problems with it. First of all, they only got about a third of the vote, like literally a third of the vote. That's worse than the Tories holding 100% of the power with 43% of the vote. But they also only got a slightly more votes than the Conservatives. It was like tiny. And yet they had way more MPs. And I thought to myself, obviously I was a Labour supporter, so I was quite pleased with the outcome. But I thought to myself, but what if it was reversed? Would I be happy if it was reversed, if the Conservatives won that many MPs with that shared vote? No, I'd be appalled. I'd be outraged. So I decided to be outraged anyway and decided that, no, we need proportional representation. This is clearly ridiculous. But it is ridiculous because, and I'll tell you the other thing, strategically, it's ridiculous as well. It's not just a moral issue. I think there is a really strong moral imperative there, but it's practical because do you know what? For most policies, the majority of the public are generally quite progressive. So if you are a Labour supporter, I don't understand why you would want first past the post. I understand that with proportional representation, Labour would have to share power with others, but they'd be, but that the Parliament would still be representative of the population, and the population are generally progressive. So it would help. I mean, whereas with first past the post, every generation that Labour come to power, and they do some things, you go, oh, this is fantastic, this is going to be brilliant, except that's only half right. You think this is great and it's going to be brilliant. No, it's not going to be brilliant, because what's going to happen is the Tories are going to come back in and wreck it all. The country is in a much worse state now than it was in 1997. It's not just that the Tories have reined back the improvements that Labour made. It's not just that they stopped the improvements continuing. They've actually made things worse than when Labour came to power. For most people, anyway, for most people. And at that point, you just think, so all Labour exists to do in a first past the post system is to give us a little bit of respite. It's like the Tory government holding someone's head underwater, half drowning them. And then it's like the Labour government come in and lift your head up for a bit so you can catch a few breaths before the Tories push your head back underwater. That's what it feels like with first past the post to me. But anyway, C. Dan Smith saying, my vote has never counted. I've had Thatcher as my MP moved and had Major moved up to Lincolnshire and another Tory. So frustrating. But it is. I mean, this is why when people talk about, oh, but with proportional representation, you don't have a local MP. It's like, no, you do. You're guaranteed. Well, okay. If you are attracted to vote for one of the big parties, should we say, you are guaranteed a local MP. I don't have a local MP. We've got first past the post. I don't have a local MP. My MP doesn't come here. My MP doesn't do surgeries here. My MP, because he's a Conservative, it's not just that he's he's not the laziest Conservative MP, actually. He does reply to emails, but there's no point. There's absolutely no point, because if your issue, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to persuade him to vote for like more progressive policies. I get that. But if I have an issue that's a genuine issue, an objective issue, but his political ideology won't allow him to acknowledge that issue, he just won't acknowledge it. Whereas with proportional representation, there would be some Conservative MPs here, but there'd be Labour MPs, there'd be a Green MP probably, there'd definitely be a Lib Dem MP. So if you have a local issue, it allows you to go, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to get a better response by going to this particular MP, or you can sort of, and it depends on the system because we don't know what sort of PR we'll get, but it sort of allows you to pick and choose the MP you think is going to be most receptive, doesn't it? In theory, depending on how, unless of course they just portion up between the MPs. But anyway, when the Tories have been in power 2/3 of the time since World War II, even being second party is meaningless. But it is, I mean, they are in for longer, but even if they weren't in for longer, you can destroy far more quickly than you can build. You know, if you think about building a house, takes like, well, it depends. These days, it takes a few years to build a house, but it can take time to build a house. It takes a day to knock it down. So, you know, Labour implementing progressive policies, you can't just like wave a magic wand and all of a sudden you've done this thing. Like, take nationalisation. It would take years to nationalise a public service. Years. I mean, there was a hasty process done in the 40s because of huge amounts of money being pumped in and people getting used to the fact that we were going to get into massive debt. You can't do that these days. So the actual process of nationalisation would take years to do it without actually piling on the borrowing. And yeah, if you do that, you could spend 15 years building up a nationalised public service. The Tories could privatise it in 2 years flat, and it'll all be gone, all be sold off. As long as politically they can get away with it, they could do it in 2 years flat. The reason why it's taken them so long to privatize the NHS is because they're doing it against even their own voters' wishes. So they had to do it quite slowly, although they have accelerated in recent years. But the yeah, they've years. So even if Labour were in power more often than the Tories, the Tories would just come in and wreck everything immediately. It's so easy to do that. Pauline to say, my MP is Andrew Bridgen. Oh dear. He never visited my town before this year, but he's going all out recently, canvassing surgeries, even a Christmas card. I think he sees the writings on the wall. Well, it's the only thing he is seeing then. He's a bit deluded, the old man. But there we go. I'll go through a few other comments because sort of coming to the end now. It says, literally any and all LGBT issues will always be ignored to Conservatives because they bow to the hard right-wing ideology. Well, it's a combination. The way I perceive it, it's a combination of that, right? There are people who are actively against giving rights to minority groups, right? Because it's not them. You know, it's almost like they have this sort of master race model, like this Aryan model. We're building a society for this person, right? Anyone who deviates from it, no. And the rest of them don't fundamentally care. Like, you know, you can see this thing with Chris Skidmore. He's the MP who's resigned because of Rishi Sunak reining back on net zero. He's resigned on that. And now it's been reported he's refusing to endorse the Conservatives for the by-election. And the reason for that is, he says he don't want to get into party politics. He's not going to back anyone. The reason for that is, and I got this from his resignation letter, there was a strong hint in his resignation letter that his views were not just out of kilter with his parliamentary colleagues, but out of kilter with his local Conservative Party. That's why I think he's refusing to endorse his replacement, because he knows his replacement will be, you know, in the either the pay or the thrall otherwise of the oil lobby. So he obviously knows that his green views are out of step with his local Conservative association. So that's why he can't endorse his replacement, because he knows his replacement's going to be, you know, Texas Billy. But there we go. Have I seen Moggy's campaign live streams? He's trying to talk to his constituents and explain Tory policy. No, but I know he's done podcasts in the past. So I know he has. I mean, to be fair to him, he has tried to engage voters. I can't actually slate that. You know, he's done podcasts and stuff like that. I find it hard to criticize that, because I think MPs should do that. It's just that it doesn't do very well when he's up against someone who counters his view, does he? He has to accuse them of being aggressive. But there we go. We've sort of run out of time there. Thanks very much for coming, everyone. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel, of course. There'll be another live stream tomorrow morning with Graham. Thanks for coming on. Have a great day, everyone. And until next time, I'll see you later.